Well, ladies and gentlemen, what retarded news are we going to get from Retardistan today? Before we get on to the main news stories of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help. And if you'd like to support the work that I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. So let's get on to the first news story. And to be honest, it's a doozy, but also one, if you've watched this channel, you'll know quite a bit about and will come as very little surprise. And this is the news that the US will be issuing a grand jury probe into MTN. So it was revealed that the US Department of Justice, the DOJ, would convene a grand jury investigation into MTN's operations in Iran and Afghanistan. Now, the investigation follows allegations that MTN paid protection money to groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban whilst operating in Afghanistan. According to the allegation, they facilitated communications in Iran in ways that may have violated US sanctions and anti-terror laws. Now, families of US soldiers killed in Afghanistan have filed civil lawsuits accusing MTN of aiding terrorist groups. And the Department of Justice's grand jury process means the prosecutors are now gathering evidence under oath, a very serious escalation. Now, for those of you who don't know, obviously MTN and its connections to ANC elites have been, shall we say, contentious for some time. And so what exactly that this reveals, well, it will be telling. Now, with news of all of this, it wiped 30 billion off the value in MTN's market share, with share prices dropping by 8%. This is despite MTN delivering a 23% service growth across Africa, a return to profit after previous losses, and an upgrade of medium-term guidance, basically meaning that there was more confidence in the company. And so what this shows you is that the greater financials really were overshadowed by the geopolitical and legal risk. Now, if this really all materializes, MTN's like done for. So what does this actually mean for the value and the operational efficiency of MTN? Well, MTN's Iran business is now valued at, well, zero. It's seen as toxic because of the sanctions risk. And ironically, if MTN exited Iran, it may actually boost investor confidence. Now, this all comes amid strained US-South Africa relations, with Washington already furious at Pretoria over its Iran ties, the South Africa's ICJ case against Israel, and as you know, they've already slapped us with 30% US tariffs on South African goods. Now, this flagship company, MTN, which obviously previously had the president as its chair, is now under direct US legal scrutiny. And it's interesting to note that actually in terms of its global portfolio, South Africa at the moment is the weakest link in MTN's global portfolio. So the question then has to become, if revenue in South Africa is falling by 4%, but growing in other markets such as Nigeria, and if the environment in South Africa is so inhospitable, given all the, should we call it, the direct oversight from America, will MTN just leave the country? Because I would, if I were them and I was going through all these sanctions risks and being under greater scrutiny. Do let me know what you think in the comment section below. So in other news, the ANC has warned of collapse. Yep, it's good news for once. ANC is going to collapse because no one likes them. And this is the news that Senzo, an ANC veteran, has warned of the ANC's collapse. He says that the local government elections in 2026 could finish the ANC off if municipalities are lost. He says that the reason for this is that the ANC has had arrogance and has been taking their voters for granted. Now, he himself faces his own corruption allegations and is currently on special leave. Now, this has also prompted former Minister Gigaba and other ANC veterans to say that the ANC has lost its way. According to them, the ANC is scrambling to win back municipalities from the IFP and the DA, with some local leaders promising a clean sweep. Now, it's been very interesting to see that these former ANC ministers and veterans are all saying that the reason for the ANC's decline is because, according to them, the ANC went into a coalition with the DA. But that's not true, though, is it? The reason the ANC is under decline is because the ANC has destroyed the economy, destroyed every public service going, not created any jobs, and looted the state dry. We all know this to be true, apart from the ANC itself. Now, moving on to the ANC's next looting pandemic, and this will obviously be the NHI. Now, this is the news that the health minister, Moron, also known as Aaron, has asked the High Court to pause all the multiple NHI cases until the Constitutional Court rules on Ramaphosa's signing decision. He's saying that there's 17 legal challenges across the courts, most of them from Solidarity, the HFA, the HASA, Summer, and so forth. And he says that really all of these cases may become pointless if the Constitutional Court says that Ramaphosa's signing was irregular, and so the act needs to go back to bill status. But this has led many to say that what the government is actually trying to do is stall litigation whilst quietly implementing the NHI, calling it unconstitutional and unaffordable. So the basic idea here is that they want to stall all these 17 cases pending a constitutional court case that really may come out in like manana. And now that these cases have been stalled, or if you will, pending that constitutional court case, they'll just go, okay, well, we'll just carry on implementing it. And then it will be at that stage where it will be like too late to reverse it, even if the act has been signed. Pretty nefarious, really. Now, private hospital groups have warned of doctors' exodus, saying that specialities have no clarity underneath the NHI. And they've already cited the NHI as being a cause of brain drain, with young doctors emigrating from the country. Now, the government insists it's a pragmatic solution to streamline cases, but opponents say it's just a delaying tactic to entrench NHI. So you can see exactly how this is going to go, right? We're going to have mass amounts of doctors leave. NHI is going to be an absolute failure. So you know what we're going to do? We'll get doctors from Cuba. Except in other news, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced visa bans for officials in Brazil, Africa, and the Caribbean who allow Cuba's doctor program. He called it forced labor, alleging that Cuba confiscates salaries and passports of doctors, which they do, because remember it's a communist country. And according to the news, South Africa has hosted Cuban doctors since 1996 under the Mandela-Castro Agreement. Now, during COVID, South Africa paid 414 million rand for 217 Cuban doctors, which sparked criticism. But South Africa hasn't yet been warned by the US for this. But again, it could be another escalation and another layer of strain between the US and South Africa. And on to a very final news story. And this is the suggestion that South Africa doesn't actually know how to defend its black economic empowerment policies. Now, for those of you who don't know, BEE was introduced in the early 2000s after apartheid, with the idea that it was designed to redistribute economic power by giving black South Africans greater ownership, management, and procurement opportunities. The idea was to break the entrenched monopoly of white South Africans. The idea was to create a new black middle class and upper class that could meaningfully participate in the economy. Now, the mechanisms included ownership targets, management control quotas, and procurement rules forcing companies to buy from BEE-compliant firms, enterprise development schemes. But over time, it evolved into the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Policy known as BBBEE, with multiple scorecard elements. Now, the problem has become that rather than having broad empowerment, it has empowered the politically connected elites and connected cronies. These individuals have often benefited the most, with deals like empowerment shareholdings, which go to a small circle of ANC-linked individuals. Now, businesses have to navigate a complex set of codes and carve out rules which drive up costs. It's basically the compliance of BEE. Small and medium enterprises struggle mostly because it's costly that you're going to have somebody who solely does that. It's an added additional cost, while big corporates can afford consultants to game the system. Now, the debate has basically become polarized. Many black South Africans instinctively support it as redress, and many white South Africans instinctively oppose it, seeing it as reverse racism. And this binary framing prevents serious debate about whether it actually works. Now, despite 20 plus years of policy, South Africa has no comprehensive public archive tracking BEE real outcomes, and researchers struggle to measure whether it has reduced inequality or simply entrenched corruption. Now, the Free Market Foundation and Solidarity claim that BEE has cost the country $5 trillion in lost opportunities, inefficiencies, and corruption. Foreign investors see it as an unpredictable regulatory burden, and businesses often structure deals purely for compliance and not growth. It's also led to many skilled professionals, especially white South Africans, leaving the country, seeing BEE as a mechanism that blocks opportunities for themselves. And this has fueled brain drains and worsening skill shortages in critical sectors. All this whilst poverty and unemployment remain at high levels, suggesting that BEE hasn't achieved broad transformation. And critics argue that it only benefits a tiny black elite, whilst leaving millions behind. Now, for those of you who don't know, Donald Trump has linked trade policy with political demands. And during his talks on how to avoid the 30% tariffs on South African goods, Washington quietly pushed South Africa to 1. Drop its ICJ case against Israel, and 2. Scrap or weaken BEE. And South Africa has refused to compromise, and the US went ahead with the tariffs anyway. Now, for Washington, BEE is seen as a protective barrier that distorts the market, and that's because it does. It's intended to do that. They also consider BEE a form of economic nationalism, and that's because that is also what it is. And some may say that that's the entire objective of the whole communist movement. They also say it's a tool for ANC patronage policies, which undermines democracy. And that's exactly what it is. Now, the ANC has doubled down, saying that BEE is non-negotiable and part of its redress of apartheid. Key opponents, such as the DA, call for replacing BEE with a non-racial pro-poor endorsement. Action SA and the Freedom Front Plus say that BEE is destructive and racist in itself. Now, for the ANC, abandoning BEE would be political suicide, as it's deeply tied to their liberation narrative. The idea basically being that they've liberated everybody and given them economic freedom, even though they haven't. They've given themselves economic freedom because, as they famously once said, they didn't go into the struggle to be poor. Now, BEE is no longer just a local debate. It's now part of the global trade wars. It has caused more economic harm than good. Now, the problem is South Africa no longer knows how to defend this policy on the global stage because there is no real defense to it. It hasn't produced the outcomes that they want. So apart from it being ideological and for it to be elite forms of capture and cronyism, it hasn't produced any of the other results that they claim that it would. In any case, the ANC no longer knows how to defend this policy on the global arena, which means that the pressure to scrap it is mounting daily. In any case, these are all just my views. Do let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.
Having questions, how do we even start to decolonize science? Because science is true because it is science. And, what can you do? And my response to that was, if I personally were committed to enforcing decolonization, science as a whole is a product of Western modernity, and the whole thing should be scratched off, especially in Africa. So if you want practical solutions to how to decolonize science, we'd have to restart science from, an African perspective, from our perspective of how we've experienced science. For instance, I had a question for all the science people is, there's a place in KZN, Mkabialingana, and they believe that through the magic, the black magic, we call it black magic, they call it witchcraft, others, that you are able to send a lightning to strike someone. So can you explain that scientifically? Because it is something that happens every